Hi everyone, this is Arcacia with Apache, and we are here for the December Family Spotlight. And with us, we have the Matarellis, Dominic and Jessamine Matarelli. They've been homeschooling a while. Go ahead and say hi, guys.
Hello.
We want to thank you guys for joining us here. We're going to be getting into some interview questions here in a minute. But just a reminder, Apache is doing a family spotlight once a month where we get to know a homeschooling family. If you're interested in being part of our family spotlight, please send us a message on Facebook or through email. You can email us at info@apachecentralillinois.org, or you can send us a private message on Facebook. And we'd love to have you and get to know your family and how your homeschooling journey has started and is going. But for now, let's get started with the Matarellis. Dominic and Jessamine, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and what prompted you guys to start homeschooling, kind of all wrapped up in one there.
So we live in East Peoria. We have 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls. The oldest is 11 and the youngest is 1. And the youngest came 4 days early to share a birthday with Big Brother. So that's fun.
Neat. So how long have you guys been homeschooling on your homeschooling journey? Have you been homeschooling from the beginning? And what kind of started that idea of, I mean, everybody has their reasons of why they've started homeschooling. So what was your guys' reasons on why you started homeschooling?
Well, when our oldest was born, the maternal instinct really kicked in, and I was working full-time because I had student loans, and I really didn't want to be working. I would have preferred to be home with my child. And so the place where I worked had a daycare center there, so we were close together but still apart. And so that experience was difficult because I knew it wasn't really what I wanted for my parent-child relationship. I felt a responsibility that I should be the one raising my child. And so when it came, so once I was able to, work long enough to pay off my student loans, and when our second was born, I decided to stay home. That was when we really started considering homeschooling. We looked into it. We went to an Apache convention when our oldest was 4, and that really, being around other homeschoolers, showed me that it really wasn't that weird. I was public schooled. My husband went to Peoria Christian, so we had public school and private school backgrounds. And I had this idea in my head that homeschooling was a really strange thing. I come from a family of public school teachers, and so it was just a different approach to education that hadn't been experienced before in our families. So going to the convention really opened our eyes and helped us to see that people really do it and that it's doable. Mm-hmm. And so we did it for preschool for our oldest. And then right about that time, we had another child and we moved to a different house. And we had a lot of changes going on at once. And this was right when our oldest was starting kindergarten. We moved to a school district where we knew the school principal and the superintendent. And I thought, well, let's try public school for a year and see how it goes. So for kindergarten, we sent our oldest to public school, and it didn't sit well with me. Mm-hmm. I would have preferred to have him home. I felt like there wasn't a lot of academic progress from what I saw him doing in preschool. And I felt very detached from his education and what he was doing, and I thought the communication wasn't great. And I can't really say specifically that I'm against anything in specifically that they did or they taught him. It just wasn't right for our family. And after that, I knew that I would homeschool him and the other ones from then on. So it was, I think it was an interesting experience. I think if I hadn't put him in public school, I would always be wondering if we were missing something. But we're not really missing anything. I feel good about our decision to homeschool now.
And part of the decision too was making a conscious decision to educate our children from a Christian worldview rather than a secular worldview. And one of the things that I remember distinctly is we were sending him to school, but not necessarily knowing everything that was being taught in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just another area that kind of didn't sit well with us.
Right. Right. Well, you mentioned two words that kind of stuck out to me: conscious decision and detachment. I can kind of relate with that too, because I remember way back when me and my husband were first married and we started having kids, we never had those conversations. We never had conversations about how we were going to homeschool our kids, or if we were going to homeschool or public school or anything like that. We didn't have the conversations of if I was going to work, if I wasn't going to work. And I can remember having my newborn and being on maternity leave and just automatically going back to work because I thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, is go back to work. And I didn't even last one day. I felt completely detached from my daughter. And I called my husband crying. I said, I can't do this. I need to stay home with her. I can't have somebody else raising my child. And the funniest thing, he said, well, I thought you were going to stay home. that goes to show you the kind of conversations that we've never had before in our early marriage. And then the other conversation was with homeschooling. My daughter was in a public preschool, and it was just automatically to register her in kindergarten. And I was filling out the paperwork, and I was talking to my husband. I was like, yeah, I'm filling out Elena's paperwork to register in kindergarten. And he looked at me, he said, I thought we were going to homeschool. So it's very important to have those conversations early on, I've discovered. Those are two conversations that me and my husband missed out on in the beginning of our marriage. And it's really nice to see another couple have those conversations and to be able to realize the important decisions it is with family planning and building your family. And I noticed that you guys also mentioned that you kind of started this kind of thinking when you attended the Apache convention. So that leads me to my next question is, where have you guys found support in your homeschooling journey? Because I know it's very important to have that support, because a lot of times we can feel alone when we're homeschooling because we are in our houses, and there are occasions where we're by ourselves homeschooling. So where have you guys reached out and found that support in your homeschooling journey?
Well, ever since that first convention, we've tried to attend a homeschooling convention at least once a year. Most of the time that's been the local Apache convention. We also attended one of the great homeschooling conventions a couple years ago. And last year we had planned to do the ICHE convention before it was virtualized. And so I would say that's been a real help to us to kind of connect to the local homeschooling community. And the more years you go to convention, the more people you meet, and we've also done a local co-op. Do you have anything to add?
Well, with the conventions, they're like my favorite time of year. It's like a vacation. I don't know how I could go on another year without going to convention, because it just gives me that boost I need every year to get new ideas, or just listen to somebody say, homeschooling's good. It's good for your family. It's good for your children. It's not this strange thing that, there's nobody else doing, because it is a good thing. And sometimes we forget that when you're with your kids 24 hours a day and trying to do fractions and having your children scream in your ear that they don't understand and you're not teaching them right. And it's nice to have just that boost of new ideas and energy every year. And it's nice to take a break for a couple days. So definitely the conventions. And then through Facebook, I'm part of a few groups. The curriculum that we use has its own Facebook group where you can interact with a lot of the authors and the publisher, and they do videos all year long. And that's a good way to connect with other moms all over the world who are doing the same actual curriculum. And then besides the co-ops, I've signed up for some things through the Park District homeschooling classes that have been good just for the kids to be around other kids more, and through church. But those have all been resources that have been helpful to us.
Well, those are some great resources, and reaching out to other moms I know can be a huge encouragement for me, especially when I'm struggling with something, or I've tended to lost my purpose in homeschooling and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's a great reminder going to a convention and saying, oh yeah, this is the reason why I'm doing it. I love my kids and I want to be purposeful for them, and I want to be pouring into their lives. So those are definitely some great opportunities that you mentioned of connecting with the homeschooling families. And so this kind of brings me to the next question is, I mentioned earlier about how it's great encouragement when you're feeling down. There are those times when you struggle as a homeschooler. Everything isn't, roses and you don't have the perfect children that are just sitting there at their desk and saying, yes, mommy, what are we going to learn about today, mommy? There are some rough days. So what do you do, or what is the most difficult thing that you've come across in your homeschooling journey? And is there a way that are you still struggling with that, or have you been finding a way to move past that? So give us some ideas on that.
We have a strong-willed child.
Oh.
And it makes every day
a challenge.
Just new and exciting. You just never know which version of this child you're going to get.
Yeah.
So I would say that is our biggest challenge, is we have 5 children. They all are different and have very different personalities. And sometimes they're grouchy. And sometimes they're grouchy at the same time on the same days. And so that would be our biggest challenge, is simply dealing with attitudes, character training. That's what we're focusing on. And it's not a bad thing to have a strong-willed child. They make great leaders, and he really is very talented, intelligent person. It's just a challenge trying to find sometimes the strength to face math with him, and history and language and science. But we get through it. You just have to pray a lot and just ask God to help you. It's just been, that's been our biggest challenge. And I think that's something that almost every family has one child.
One strong-willed child, yes.
One child who is strong-willed, powerful, whatever you want to call them.
That's true.
I would say another challenge is it's, and I would equate it to parenting. When you have one baby, it's overwhelming at first, but you don't know exactly what overwhelming means until you have that second child. And for us, the transition from 1 to 2 was the most difficult. But then that's another challenge with homeschooling. When you're just teaching one child, you're able to put all of your energy and attention into that child. But then as you add additional students, that can also be an adjustment period, like it is with parenting. So
yeah, definitely figuring out ways to work that out. I agree. I have 5 kids myself with all different ages, and trying to figure out time to designate to each one and what their needs are too. And with homeschooling too, it's great that you guys mentioned character training, because homeschooling isn't just about academics. I mean, for us, me and my husband, we've always said that homeschooling is our lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that we are doing with our family, and it's more than just academics. It's character training, it's Bible training, it's all those kind of stuff wrapped up in one, that we're trying to mold our child into being the person that God wants them to be. So definitely agree with all those statements. Those are good statements. So we talked about the bad. Let's talk about the good, because there's also those good, enjoyable moments too. So what has been your most enjoyable thing about homeschooling?
Do you want to start?
Sure. I think one of the things that I have enjoyed about it, other than just, I had that early experience of having a baby in daycare, and that about ripped my heart out. So every time I've had a baby since then, it has been just pure joy to be able to spend that time with my child and watch them grow. I can't imagine not being there to, to see them actually learn how to read and grasp these concepts, and see the kids interact with each other and bond more as a family. Another thing that I really like about homeschooling is the flexibility in the schedule to be able to do what you want to do, because I know you have family that lives out of state. I do too. And we can go visit whenever we need to and just take our school with us, or take a field trip, and we don't have to worry about, oh, but the kids have school. What are we going to do? And also being able to just, if your child isn't grasping a concept like they should, you have the freedom and flexibility to teach it in a different way, or to move away from it and come back to it later when they've, built up enough skill to revisit it. So just the freedom and flexibility, and then being able to spend the time with your family.
And then also from an academic perspective, one of the things that surprised me the most in the beginning was how much some of the younger kids were picking up on what the older kids were learning. And I mean, our younger son, our second son, he was reading almost at the same level as his older brother when his older brother was in kindergarten. And I mean, that was partly because he was there in the classroom every day while she was teaching him letters, how to read, how to write, and he was learning too. So that's another benefit, I would say.
Yes, definitely getting to enjoy your families and enjoy the bonding experiences. And I agree with the flexibility too. The flexibility is great. I love flexibility. We are year-round homeschoolers, so we school year-round, and we do 6 weeks on and 1 week off. And during those 1 weeks off, we a lot of times can just go away for a few days and take breaks here and there and explore different things. And if I'm looking for something for a homeschooling field trip, I can take my kids, out of state for a homeschooling field trip, because, we're homeschoolers and we don't have to be at the public school the next day at 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's been great. And, another thing with the flexibility, it also helps you to be more of an outreach too. You can actually reach out to others because you tend to be able to be at home, and so you can have more opportunities to reach out. I know for us, we're probably going to be expecting my parents coming into town, because my mom, unfortunately, there's some illness on her side of the family that we're having to deal with. And so we're going to be spending a few days with my mom and host my parents this upcoming week. And so it's a time that we can actually pour into my parents and minister to my parents during their time of heartbreak. And so those are times that you might not necessarily get if your kids are public school, because you can just sit back and you can actually recognize those times as, oh, this is a ministry time, that we can actually take the time to minister to somebody else right now, guys. And it teaches our kids great ministry opportunities too, I think, too, with homeschooling, as it involves them. I mean, there's been so many times I've been able to take my kids to ministry opportunities because we're homeschoolers and because they don't have to be in school And we can go like, for the Midwest Food Pantry and things like that, we can actually take them out and show them ministry opportunities, which is great too. I love it. I can talk about homeschooling all day because I love it like you guys. So let's continue on here with these questions. So the next question, do you guys take a certain style or approach to homeschooling? And if so, what is that style or approach? I know I'm an eclectic homeschooler. That's what I call myself. So what is your guys' style and what is the approach that you guys take?
Sometimes I feel like we're just trying to survive.
I think that could probably be a style or approach, the survival approach.
When we first started, I was mirroring school at home. Mm-hmm. And we were using a very strict curriculum that, here's your book work, and you sit there and you do a workbook page every day that should take about 45 minutes and then move on to the next subject. And it was awful. And it just kind of robbed us of our joy. And it wasn't bad at first.
It helped ease us into homeschooling.
I think it takes a while to figure out what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
It could probably be a confidence booster too. I mean, for me also, I kind of started on the same ways. I didn't know what I was doing. So I kind of stick the public school at home approach. Yeah. And it gave me a little bit of confidence to let me be able to branch out later on. So go ahead.
Yeah. The structure really helped in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So now, I don't know what I would call it. We kind of Charlotte Mason, we don't go like frolic through the fields, like you think of when you think of homeschooling. I used to think, oh, we're going to go outside and learn about nature. But I mean, we live in Illinois and it's like 0 degrees half the year, especially, So what I do now is we start in July and we do our math and language curriculum. That's when we start it. And we just, and history. And we go until we are done with it, which usually ends up being around March. And then I start our science and whatever else I want to do. Because we focus, when I do science, I incorporate everything else into it. We go more in depth. I don't know how to explain it. Mm-hmm. We do our reading is based on the science and our copy work is based on, on whatever we're learning about. Mm-hmm. So we do the boring stuff, more like the formal math and workbook type stuff, like now until spring. And then when it gets warm out and we can do science experiments and go frolic in the woods, that's when we do the fun stuff. And
that's when your little house on the prairie in it, right?
Yeah. So it's just kind of like our break. So I tried doing a summer break for a few years and we were so bored because we really don't have that much to do without a structure. We need our structure or the kids just go nuts. It's like, who wants to play outside when it's 100 degrees outside in the middle of summer and we don't have a swimming pool? So it's not like we can just hang out and there's not really a beach close by. So we have just kind of developed the system that works for us. I don't really know what else to add to that.
And it works well too because the kids aren't trying to get through every single subject every single day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you kind of spread it out and break it up some more, then it kind of makes it more manageable for them too.
I love how homeschooling can be such an individual approach. You tailor it to your child and you tailor it to your family, and whatever works best for your family and your child is what works in homeschooling. And that I love that approach. I mean, I have another story just this week. My daughter, she's in her last year of math. She's taken Algebra 2. And so this is her last credit in high school in math that she needs. And she still has one more year of high school to go. And she's struggling with Algebra 2. And Daddy's the one that does math in our house because I do not do math. That's the one thing that I refuse to do. I don't like math. I'm not a math person. And I told him that when we were homeschooling, You're the math person. You get to have the kids win for the math part. And so my husband actually is finishing up his degree in biblical studies right now. This is his last semester. And so he's having a lot of schoolwork right now. And so he hasn't been able to take the time with her to work on the math. And she just came to me this week and she's like, Mama, I have a proposal. She says, I have one more year of high school left. For my last year, I wasn't going to take a math program because I would be done. How about we just shelf this math till next year when Daddy has the time to help me? And that works for us because right now our life is busy with James working, being in biblical studies, and we have our own business and he's trying to finish up his degree too. So that works for us. I'm like, yes, we can do that. We can, she had an extra year where she wasn't going to need to do math. We can just wait when he has the time to focus on her, and it works great for our family, just like it works great for your family to do the boring stuff and the math and the English up front, and then in the springtime to do the fun sciencey experiments where you get to dig your toes into the muddy water and stuff. It's great how homeschooling works for that. And I love that part about homeschooling is that it's an individual path and not everybody's path looks the same, which is really great. So let's get to some individual questions here. Let's talk Dominic. As a dad who works, I know my husband struggles with this at times. How do you get involved with homeschooling your children? How do you become an influential person in the homeschooling journey?
Well, like you said, it's not always easy. I try to do whatever I can in the evenings to help out also with math. But then on the weekends too, if things, if we kind of hit a snag during the week, then sometimes we'll use a Saturday afternoon to play catch up. And I do regret that I'm not here at home more and able to be more involved. But it's just a matter of trying to help out whenever I can and trying to be supportive of what she's doing when I'm not here. But then also, using that relationship that you have with your kids to kind of continue learning even when you're not in, a classroom setting. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I love that you said that, encouraging Jessamy with what she does too, and then taking the time to actually do the other stuff when you are available. My husband has encouraged me the same way. I mean, there was actually quite a few years ago at an Apache convention, actually, he heard a homeschool dad speak, and that's when he caught, we had been homeschooling, I think at least 3 or 4 years by then, and that's when he caught the dad vision. And he's been an encouragement ever since. And I think it's so important for dads to hear that a lot of times us moms just want the encouragement and the support saying, I believe in you and you can do it, and offering suggestions and things like that, just to be supportive and taking a part in the homeschooling journey. And it's so great to see another dad. I see my husband do it, but it's so great to see another dad do that too. And then encouraging other dads saying, yes, you can do it. Our wives just want some encouragement saying that they can do this and that they have the capability. So it's really awesome to see that. And I'm sure Jessamy appreciates it too.
Of course.
Because I know I appreciate it when my husband does it. So Jessamy, let's get to your side of things now. How do you prevent burnout in your children and burnout in yourself as you progress through the school year? I know we're getting ready to hit winter. And a lot of times winter blues can happen, especially when we're stuck inside more and because of the cold weather. So what's some ways that you can prevent, or that helps you to prevent that burnout? I've seen it in my kids at times when they're like, Mom, I'm done. I just don't want to do anymore. So what are some ways that you work past that?
The number one way that I deal with that in my children is taking a break. So because we start in July, there's no rule that says you have to be done at a certain time,
right?
Because they're learning pretty much every day. We do some type of learning, but I know with certain subjects, they can start to wear on my kids, math being the biggest. But I have one who really doesn't like history, which is hard for me because that is my favorite subject. And so it's really hard to love something and your child doesn't love it. And so I've had to come up with some creative ways to try to pique his interest. And so, you know, we try to do just totally different, weird things. So like they'll wake up and instead of saying, hey, let's not read out of our book today, let's, you know, do an art project about what we're learning about. I have these great books, the Draw Right Now books and the history, what's the other one? Draw Right Now and Draw and Write Through History. Is that what it's called? Whatever they're called. Anyway, so they have, you know, you can draw pictures. It shows you how to draw whatever you're learning about. And then they have a copy work section. So sometimes we'll just stop what we're doing and do that for a while, take a break from the actual curriculum. Sometimes we'll take field trips. But I think the biggest thing you can do when burnout hits is just take a break, because if you keep trying to go, it's just they're not gonna retain any information. It's not gonna help your relationship with your child, and it's just gonna be miserable.
Yep,
And
been
something
there,
else,
done that.
something else that has helped too is to try to combine areas of learning whenever possible. For example, we recently did an etiquette class with all of the kids. We had a shorter class for the girls, and then a kind of more detailed, in-depth, kind of topical class with the boys. But they were all in the room. The boys were in the room for the girls' class, and the girls were in the room for the boys' class. And so that's where some of that cross-learning still takes place. But then, you know, just etiquette training is something that you don't get in public school.
Right.
And so just finding something interesting like that, that's kind of a little bit outside of the box, but still useful for life skills and development of character and personal interaction and things like that. That was good. Another thing I would mention is with one of our science classes a couple years ago, we were doing sea creatures, and at the end of the class, we ordered some dissection kits online. And what did we do? A starfish, a squid. What was the other one?
Crayfish.
Crayfish. And I mean, when I was in school, we didn't dissect anything until high school. And here they were in what, 2nd and 4th grade, dissecting these creatures. And I mean, it was a memorable experience. So just finding little things like that to help supplement the book learning. And like Illinois has a ton of, you know, historical, like the Lincoln Heritage sites and all of that. We've tried to do, you know, museums and just little things here and there wherever we can to kind of keep it interesting, shake it up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Some things that our family has done is when we've been off exploring, like if I'm visiting my parents, we try to do one educational thing, something that's in around them that we wouldn't normally be exposed to, that piques my kids' interest. I know my son, we still haven't yet done it because of COVID. The museum has been closed every time we've been to Oklahoma, but he's really into weather. He loves weather, and they happen to have the largest weather museum 10 minutes from my parents' house. So that's on our list of things to do because my son loves weather. And just encouraging them to, a lot of times I also let my kids pick their curriculum too. I mean, my kids are a little bit older. My preschooler doesn't really pick her curriculum because she'd probably pick, you know, Mickey Mouse. But my older kids, I mean, I've allowed them to pick some of their curriculum that they've been interested in. I mean, my oldest, she's a junior this year. and she wants to study to be, she's right now studying to be a doula, and then after she gets done with that, she wants to be a midwife. So on your recommendation, Jessamy, I ordered the master books, advanced pre-med books, and my daughter loves it. She's never been more excited about science than this year.
Good.
So yes, just encouraging finding those things outside the box, like you mentioned, and also having your kids be a part of what they're learning about too, I think is very important too. It creates excitement and it creates ownership on what they're learning, and helps them to take kind of that ownership. And it is definitely some great things that we've learned on the homeschooling journey too. So great ideas, great ideas. I love them. So what has been your most helpful advice that you have received with homeschooling?
There's been a couple of things. Probably the biggest one has been not to compare yourself to other families.
Mm.
And I mean, that's an easy trap to fall into, but it ties back to what we were saying earlier. Every family is unique. You kind of figure out what works for you, what works for your kids. And that was one thing that was really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, great advice, great. So now that you guys have been homeschooling a few years, you guys qualify as experienced homeschoolers, right? So what piece of advice would you offer to those that are starting out homeschooling, or maybe someone who's been on this journey a while and they're just looking for some fresh ideas or something? So what piece of advice would you offer? That one thing that you're like, okay, this is the golden nugget right here.
Well, I guess I would say the same thing, that you shouldn't try not to compare yourself to other homeschoolers, because it's kind of a poison that will just kill your joy. Be careful when you're talking, when you're asking questions. Don't, you can ask 100 different moms, what curriculum should I use? And they'll all tell you a different one, and they'll swear by it. And then you just have to figure out what works for you, and what works for your children. That would be just kind of follow your own path. Don't be afraid to follow God's leading to what you feel like you're supposed to be doing, and just learn what your children need. And every child is different, every family is different, and every schooling experience will be different for every child, even within our own family. I pick different courses for different kids in our house, and there are some kids I know I can do certain classes together with, and some I know that they can't work with other people. They have to, so it just know your children. Don't try to compare yourself to other families.
And I would highlight something that you just said is to trust in God. And that's, I mean, it's something that, as Christians, we try to do, but it's not always easy to do,
right?
Given circumstances. But just as we've gone through this journey together, just being open to following His guidance, asking Him for guidance, but then also, falling back on that reassurance. There have been times where we've discussed, well, does it make sense for Jessamy to get a part-time job? But every time we start to go down that path, we just come right back around to, well, no, at this point in our lives, we both feel very strongly that her place is here in the home with our kids, raising them, teaching them, and that's God's guidance.
That's a great reminder.
Even as much as it would help to have that extra paycheck,
right?
he's always provided. So just trust in him.
Definitely. I mean, homeschooling is a sacrifice because most homeschoolers are a single income family. And it's definitely a sacrifice, and just great reminders that you have there, Dominic, is trusting God, because ultimately he's the one who's given us the desire and the purpose to homeschool our children. And that's where we can go to trust that if he's given us the desire to do it, then he's going to make a way for us to do it and to trust him in that journey. And you're right, it's not always easy, and we sometimes forget that. Even though we're Christians, we sometimes forget those things, and we need to be reminded. So it's definitely some great advice. I love it that you guys have sat down here with me and given me some encouragement. And I've been homeschooling a very long time, but it's always nice to sit down with another homeschooling family and just to kind of talk things out and to be encouraged by each other and to share life together. So thank you very much for sitting down with us and kind of giving us a little glimpse into your homeschooling life and homeschooling journey. Hope that you guys were also encouraged as you sat down with me and we got to chit chat a little bit.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was our pleasure.
And again, for everyone who has been tuning in and watching this interview with Dominic and Jessamy Matarelli, this is our family spotlight. This is the December family spotlight, and we are very appreciative of the Matarellis joining us and giving us a little glimpse of their homeschooling journey. If you would like to become a family spotlight, you can do that by direct messaging us through Facebook on Facebook, or you can contact us through email at info@apachecentralillinois.org. We would love to chat with you guys and find out a little bit about your homeschooling journey and post it to our website. We actually have a new YouTube channel now that these will be going to, and we'll be posting it to our Facebook too. So, and then it goes out in our newsletter. So we hope to hear from you guys, and thanks again, Dominic and Jessamy, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Good night,
for having
everyone.
us.